Got your Bibles? Turn with me to Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4, I'm going to read from verse 18. It should pop up on the screen. Matthew chapter 4, verse 18, it says, "While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, 'Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.' Immediately he left their nets and followed him." Matthew chapter 9, from verse 9, says this, as Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. These two scriptures kind of are coming back to back in the story of Jesus and the beginning of his ministry. This is the stories of Jesus calling his disciples, 12 individuals, a motley crew, if you like, of people who were called by Jesus to be disciples, to be followers of Jesus. Now, we think of Jesus in the context of who he is because we know all that he did and has done for us. But these are a group of people that bought in before they saw the prize. This is a group of people that had to make a decision to walk in faith in a way that we can't even begin to comprehend or understand. They hadn't heard his teachings. They hadn't seen him die and rise again. They knew him as the son of a carpenter, and that's about it. These are a group of men that they were the early adopters. They stood out. And interestingly enough, Jesus didn't pick people that seemed highly qualified for the task that was before them. In fact, I think he picked them specifically for the reason is they weren't the smartest tools in the shed, because had they have been, they would have realized that it was a sucker punch. Because if you know anything about early church history, it didn't work out too great for any of these guys. We haven't got time to go into it, but it's just the facts. But they gave themselves into the hands of Jesus as he launched into the next 3 years of ministry. The question that I have for you today is, when we look at the disciples and what Jesus was endeavoring to achieve in his 3 years of ministry, I ask this question, were the disciples a help or a hindrance to Jesus fulfilling his full potential? Were they a help or a hindrance to Jesus fulfilling his full potential? Was it easier or harder for Jesus to be the Son of God and have disciples than not? Was it easier or harder for Jesus to do what he was called to do with 12 guys following him around? 12 guys who, let's be honest, weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. With a proclivity for asking dumb questions, questioning Jesus as to why he was doing things, which one of them was the most important at any given time, really not getting it. The fact that Jesus literally had to tell nursery rhymes to explain the things he was trying to do. True story. I think the answer to that is, from a purely objective perspective, is that it was more difficult than it was easy. In fact, Jesus suffered real limitations to his capacity to do what he was called to do because the disciples were hanging around. From a purely objective perspective, Jesus was limited by the disciples. And the truth is he could have done vastly more things during his time on earth if he was just left alone, if he just did it on his own. And today I want to spend some time exploring this idea of the greater purpose of Jesus and why he chose to be limited on earth so that he could fulfill a greater purpose. Because in doing so, I think we can understand something as moms and dads and husbands and wives and friends together today about how relationships are meant to work and what the true purpose of what God is wanting to do in and through your life. Today, the title of my message is Legends and Legacies. Legends and Legacies. If you're taking notes, write that down. In fact, I encourage you to take notes. I'm going to be blasting out a bunch of ideas today. And I don't really have a whole lot of time to unpackage all of them. So Write them down, think about them later. It'll give you some things to ponder. You know, we live in a golden age of entertainment, don't we? Who thinks that TV's never been as good as it is today? Come on. The shows that are on today are epic. They're awesome. The movies that are coming out, the shows. And if you kind of glance across the spectrum of entertainment, what you see is a very common theme. There's lots of legendary stories being told. Lots of legends and mythology that comes out in all the great TV shows. From the modern to the ancient, they all involve mystical, legendary figures that have some great set of skills, do some incredible exploits, and who everybody around them wants to be like. The truth is, though, with every legend, we call them myths because they tend to focus mainly on the good and diminish the bad. You know, being legendary is impersonal. Legends are observed from a distance. They inspire you because of great sets of skills or abilities. But legacies are different to legends. See, legacies are personal. They're pivotal. They're powerful. Legacies have the ability not just to inspire, but to build foundations for futures. And what I began to understand as I looked into why Jesus would limit himself so by the disciples was understand that he didn't come to be a legend. He came to build a legacy. And in building a legacy, what he allowed himself to sacrifice his significance today for his influence tomorrow. He took couple of notches down in his legendary status in the moment to build a legacy for tomorrow. And I believe that as the people of God, that we are called not just to be legends, but to build a legacy. Now, it is awesome if you can do both. But if you have to choose one, choose the legacy every single time. In fact, I'm convinced that if you choose to build a legacy, you will be seen as a legend. But failure to build a legacy in the pursuit of being a legend leads to all kinds of destructive behaviors. So will you go with me on a journey today and let's explore these ideas a little bit? Can we do that? It's awesome. How are we doing for time so far? All right, we're okay. Amazing. You know, Jesus ticks all the boxes for a legend, doesn't he? All powerful, all knowing, a time traveler, live forever. I mean, he's like all the Avengers rolled into one with all the Infinity Stones at the same time. I mean, he could do everything. But he chose instead to live as a man. You know, Jesus was 100% God and 100% man at the same time. He wasn't half and half. He was 100% both. At any time, he could summon the power of heaven. He could go places. You know, if Jesus wanted to, at any time, he could just snap his fingers and just move to be in another city and preach to a crowd. But he didn't. He walked. In fact, we know he walked because when he got tired of walking, they had to borrow a donkey from somebody else. I mean, he had no transportation other than his feet. The Bible says he didn't even have a pillow to lay his head on. He was unencumbered by things, but was encumbered by relationships. That's an important thing for us to realize, is that the relationships that we have in our lives may feel like an encumbrance, but actually they are the impetus for the legacy that God is wanting to build through you. As it was with Christ, so it is with us. See, Jesus didn't do everything that was possible. He could have preached more. He could have performed more miracles. You know, the Bible doesn't tell us that, like, in the wake of wherever Jesus went, everybody was healed. You have to think that Jesus passed by many people that were sick and didn't heal them. So that means that the possibility was that he could have done a whole lot more than what he actually did. I mean, he could, but he didn't. Why? It's because he understood his purpose. He understood his purpose. And understanding our purpose is so pivotal in our life to helping us to understand how we are to walk in this life, how we are to interact with the world that we live in, to the circumstances that surround us, and how we are to actually live the fullness of the destiny that God is calling us to live. See, Jesus could have done all those other things, but he didn't. And what's interesting is that is how the world thinks. The world thinks, pursue what is expedient now. What will get you the most bang for your buck today? In fact, when we look at the life of Jesus, there's a story just before he started his ministry. It's called the temptation of Christ. It's where Jesus went into the desert for 40 days and he was tempted by the devil right at the end. He spent 40 days praying and fasting. He was hungry and weak. And in his moment of hunger and weakness, the devil came to Jesus and tempted him. And it's really interesting when you deconstruct what are the temptations that he offered him. And I wonder sometimes if they are the same temptations that we get offered from time to time, that come our way and become ultimately distractions from us fulfilling our purpose. The first temptation was he was hungry and the devil said to him, hey, just turn this stone into bread. Fulfill your need. Meet your need. Now, Jesus couldn't just turn the stone to bread. He could have had a full-course banquet if he wanted to. But Jesus didn't do it. Why? Because he had a greater purpose. The second temptation was throw yourself off the cliff. Like, prove to everybody that you are who you say you are. So throw yourself off the cliff and the heavenly angels will come and protect you. And then everybody will know that you're the real deal. Do something extraordinary. Do something extravagant to prove your identity. Jesus said, I don't need to prove who I am. I know who I am. Third temptation was worship me and I'll give you an incredible inheritance. To which Jesus replied, no, I need to worship God. And I already have all that as my inheritance, so what do I need you for? And I wonder if often we find ourselves in a place where we find our purpose being subjected to these three ideas. Meeting our own needs, providing for ourselves and our desires and our wants, proving who we are, trying to thrash out an identity so that people will know what we've got, what our chops are, what our skills are, what we can do, how we can enhance this world that we live in. And chase after an inheritance by giving ourselves over to the others to control. Say, I'll do these things for you in return for you doing these things for me. And in many ways, compromising the true core values that we hold so dear. The reason why we're here today, to worship God, to love him, to learn his ways. And yet so often we're quick to hand over that control to somebody else for 20 pieces of silver, or for an opportunity, or for a chance at success. See, Jesus was more like you and me than we can ever imagine. He faced exactly the same things that we faced. The cool thing was he had the answers, not just for himself, but for you and I also, to help us be able to navigate really these temptations that will come, that as we seek to pursue that legendary status, Jesus rejected that and said, no, I'm here to fulfill a plan, a purpose, and build a legacy for the future. See, understanding your greater purpose is so critical. And it creates a dividing line between possibility and responsibility. So often we live our lives based on possibility. Like, what's possible? In fact, even here in church, sometimes we sing songs about all things being possible. We talk about how with God all things are possible, and I don't want to diminish that. That's all very true. But who knows that just because it's possible doesn't mean that it's profitable, nor does it mean it's particularly something that I am actually responsible for. And I think often we can find ourselves chasing possibility and failing in our responsibility. See, possibility is about building a legend, but responsibility is about building a legacy. And what God is wanting to do in you and I is build legacies through us. It's important we keep our eyes on the purpose. Everyone doing okay today? See, this is all about stewardship. This is all about you recognizing what the purpose of your life is. A couple of thoughts for you. Number one, your life doesn't belong to you. In fact, you're third on the list of people whose life you belong to. A, you belong to God. B, you belong to other people. And 3, you belong to you. Maybe if there's anything left. Now, I'm not talking about giving all of yourself to everything and every way, but it's understanding and recognizing that God gave you for me, and He gave me for you. That actually what God has deposited in me is for you, and what He deposited in you is for me. And that truly all the one another's of the Bible all go to show us that actually how we live this life best is when we do it together. And that actually our interaction with one another is pivotal in our ability to live well and succeed in this life and fulfilling the purpose and plan of God. We need each other. Isolation is the mother of all stuff-ups. We need one another. It's important that we have one another. And that's why family is so important, because it's the essence, it's the nucleus, if you like, of the one another's. And today on Father's Day, as we celebrate our dads, and I want to give a big shout out to all the single parents out here. Maybe you're a single mom here today. You've had to do the mom and the dad thing. Any single moms here, they need 2 of those things we got. I mean, because they've been doing both and. But for us to be able to do that, to live successfully, we have to have and acknowledge the purpose that God has for our life. And I think there's a few things that we have to understand, is that with purpose comes responsibility. And when I say responsibility, I don't mean things that you take on as good ideas or acknowledge as things that might be nice. No, I'm talking about responsibility in the sense, if you don't do it, no one will. If you don't do it, no one will. If I don't love my wife, well, if somebody else does, there's a real problem. If nobody else is responsible for raising my children, I'm responsible for that. You know who isn't responsible for raising your kid? God. You know who's not responsible for loving your wife? God. You alone are responsible for that. If you're a wife here today, God isn't responsible for fulfilling the needs of your husband, you are. Love, honor, respect, all those things are things that are designed to flow interrelationally. They're horizontal needs, not vertical ones. And I feel like sometimes in church, we often are praying prayers that go like, God, take from me this burden of responsibility that you've given me, or fix my stuff-ups, because I don't want to do it. And I'm just hoping that you'll just fill in the blanks and make up the difference. You know what I've realized? Is that for the things that God has made you solely responsible for, He never makes up the difference. Because otherwise, we could all just go, well, I don't need to do those things because God will take care of it. In fact, the reason why I can speak so confidently about it isn't because God can't, it's because He chooses not to. Why? Because ultimately it is a reflection of your character and who you are and what God is wanting to build in you. See, God is always wanting to do 2 things at once. He's always wanting to do something in you and do something through you. And often we're fixated on the thing that He's wanting to do through us and fail to see that what He's doing in us, but yet it is in what He is doing in us that produces the health through us. And often what we mistake is that's why when things get tough, often we feel, where's God now? Like he seems more distant. He's not distant, he's right there, but he's just saying, okay, it's time to stand up on your own feet. Like it's time to have to chew a little harder on the meat of life. It's important to exercise some of those muscles of faith, and me just not provide everything whenever it's convenient for you, but for you have to step into a new zone. And often we go, well, God's not here, but yet he's actually right there. And what he's doing is encouraging you to be a better you. Encouraging you to step in and grow in your character and grow in areas of responsibility and acknowledge that there are things that you are responsible for. And often, unfortunately, in our Christian lives sometimes, what we can often do is just go to God with a series of requests of things that we desire and we want, outcomes that we want to see, and fail to see that God has actually provided all the mechanisms for those things, but we actually need to step out and do it. It's like you want some new wooden furniture, and God has placed you in a forest of trees. You keep praying, God, I need that new furniture. Lord, bring it to me. Failing to see that he's provided all that you need. You just need to put in some elbow grease and some muscle to see it come to pass. You believe in God for prosperity and financial provision and success, but in your own personal life, you're wayward with your spending. And you're wondering why you can never seem to get ahead financially, and it's because you have failed to understand the principle of saving. And even in the point in which we understand it, there's a difference between understanding it and then actually doing it. Amen? You know, if I surveyed everybody here today and said, who thinks that saving money is a good idea? Everyone would put their hand up. And then the follow-up question, how many people are doing it? See, there's a distinction between what you believe and what you do. Believing is the beginning of wisdom. It's not the end. It actually requires energy and effort. And when it comes to living this life and living by principle, this is how God is wanting us to posture ourselves. That we need to be a people that don't just live according to our own needs and desires that are expedient in the moment, but stepping into something bigger where we actually take responsibility. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 17 gives us the key. It says, discipline your son, and he will give you your rest. Yes, he will be your delight. But what is the discipline that it talks about? It goes on and says, without a prophetic vision, the people throw off all restraint. See, the discipline that's being talked about here is a prophetic vision and a willingness to fix your eyes on that prophetic vision. That acknowledgement of the future, that acknowledgement of the purpose. It's owning what God is calling you to do. It's owning it fully. See, the absence of vision, the scripture tells us, it says the people cast off restraint, or other probably the most common translation that you have heard of this is without vision the people perish. Well, they perish because they have no restraint. When it says no restraint, or what vision does is it provides you a pathway. The absence of vision provides the possibility of endless options. And who knows that there's nothing more debilitating than too many options. You know why we love In-N-Out Burger? Because there's very few options. I mean, there is the secret menu. But the truth is that we love it because we know what we're going to get. It's consistent. We know what it is. They do the thing that they're purposed to do, and they do it well. Who's ever been to one of those restaurants where there's like 4,000 pages? And you're just sitting there going, who knows that even after you choose something, you're then second guessing for the next 30 minutes while it's being, did I choose the right thing? I mean, well, what about this? And then you see the other stuff coming out on the other plates. There's 30 tables and everybody in the restaurant's eating a different thing. And you're sitting there going, you got FOMO all over the place. Did I choose the right thing? And even as you're eating it, even as you're enjoying what you're eating, you're still thinking, but maybe I should have, the person you're with, they're eating something else, and you're going, I should have ordered that. See, the presence of options is the presence of confusion. Options produce anxiety. They produce what the Bible calls double-mindedness. Double-mindedness is just our inability to be able to see clearly one path. And that's what God is calling us to be. He's calling us to be visionaries. Now, before we move on, I want to just talk for a few minutes, when we talk about us taking responsibility, we talk about us being visionaries over our own life, it's important that we acknowledge a couple of things. And so, before we move into the climax of this particular message, we need to agree on a couple of things. You ready? Number one, you're ridiculous. Turn to the person next to you and say, you're ridiculous. You're ridiculous. Now, you might think that's a little harsh. I think I'm probably undervaluing the proposition, to be honest. The truth is we're all ridiculous. We all do ridiculous stuff all the time. You know that friend of yours that does stuff and you see it and you look at it and you then turn to the other friend and you say, that is ridiculous? Yeah, they're having that same conversation about you, right? They're looking at the things you're doing, they're going, that's ridiculous. Like, we're all ridiculous. And the truth is that the only difference between us is that some of us are better at hiding our ridiculousness than others, right? Some of us wear our ridiculous on the outside. Other of us, like me, just got really good at hiding it. Nobody really knows. But the truth is we're all ridiculous. The second thing we need to acknowledge is that our capacity, my capacity, your capacity for self-delusion knows no bounds. Every dumb decision you've ever made, in the moment you were fully convinced was awesome. Come on. In the moment you were like, this is a winner. Like, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, all evidence to the contrary, but in your mind, your ability to delude yourself and convince yourself that black is white and that white is black and that it's opposite world knows no bounds. It's true for me. It's true for you. The dumbest decisions I've ever made, in the moment I was fully convinced that it was amazing. It was going to produce something great. Another reason why the one another's are so important. The third thing that I want to touch on, and perhaps a little controversial, is that when it comes to certain aspects of responsibility in our life, it doesn't take a village. And I hear this said a lot, and I understand the sentiment. And I understand where it comes from, and it comes from a good place. But the problem is it's just not true. Because God doesn't hold a village responsible for the way that I parent my children. He never holds the village responsible for how I love my wife. He never holds the village responsible for how I love him. Now, a village is good. A great community around your world can enhance and help, but it is non-essential. God never holds the village responsible. He holds you responsible. And it's important we understand this. And the reason why is it's easy for these ideas to creep into our minds, and here's how it manifests. Well, if we just had better circumstances, if we just had more money, my marriage would be better. If the things that I can't control would be better, if the village was a better place, if the marketplace was better, or the government subsidy was better, or the opportunity was better, then I'd have a stronger marriage. Or if the school system was better, and there wasn't so much chaos in our culture, and so many questions being answered, then I'd be able to raise my kids so much better. You know what? God never doesn't give you a pass. In the worst conditions, in the worst circumstances, if you've ever done marriage vows, in there it says for better and for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, in the good times, in the bad times. It doesn't take a village. It doesn't take a village to parent children. It requires two parents that are dedicated to the process. It doesn't require a village to have a successful marriage. It just requires one man and one woman to love one another, care for one another, build each other's dreams. It doesn't take a village. Now, again, a village is great. Great friends and family, great church environment, all that kind of stuff. But can I tell you that in the absence of those things, you don't get a pass. There's no bit in the Bible that says, if life sucks, then I'll take care of it. In fact, the Bible's filled with stories of imperfect people in imperfect circumstances serving a perfect God with a perfect vision and plan. And sometimes we need to accept our circumstances and choose to be the people that God has called us to be anyway. And say, you know what? On the good days and on the bad days, on my best days and on my worst days. See, the question, we often ask ourselves the wrong questions. And I think that leads us down the wrong paths. You know, how many single people we got in here today? Where are all my singles at? All right. Just helping you see each other so you can, okay. Just helping, trying to help out, yeah. All right. Now, if you're a single person, I'm sure that you have a list of things that you're looking for in a life partner, and that's great. And so you're out scouring the lands, the nations, for the cul-de-sacs of Los Angeles, for your perfect mate. The problem is you're asking the wrong question. The question you shouldn't be asking is, how can I find that person? The question you should be asking, who is that person that I want to be with? Who are they looking for? And then purpose yourself to become that person. You hear what I'm saying? Like, your purpose shouldn't be having the best list and finding the right person. It should be, once I know what I'm looking for, am I the kind of person that they're going to want to be with? Because if you're not, ain't heaven going to help you. Just tips. You've got to ask the right questions. And when we ask the right questions, we come to different solutions. Vision helps us to see. It helps us to clarify. We've got to have a vision for our own lives. We've got to have a vision for our marriage. We've got to have a vision for our families. We've got to have a vision for our children. Because it's only the vision that we have for them that will carry us through when all the circumstances are telling us that none of that's ever going to happen. When none of that's possible. Where there's nobody else to help. When all the circumstances say it can't be done. The vision is the thing that will carry you. See, being a visionary is like being an architect. We got any architects in the house today? No? All right, I'll explain. I was going to provide an opportunity to come and share about your workplace environment, but no, I'll understand. An architect is unique in the building industry because architects have clients who come to them with ideas of outcomes that they would desire, but it's the architect's plan, the architect's job to take those ideas, see the landscape in which those ideas are meant to unfold, and then be able to look at that land and see the building before it's ever been built. Not only do they have to be able to see it, but then they have to be able to describe it. Not only do they have to describe it, they have to be able to plan for it, and they have to be able to structure things to be able to put all the right pieces in at the right time to produce the result. You are an architect of your life. You are the architect. Now, the architect doesn't have all the skills. They don't know how to do the drywall. They don't know how to do the plumbing. They don't know how to. They're not financing the whole project. But what they do have is a clear vision of what the outcome is meant to look like. And then what they do is they go about finding other people with the unique skills and abilities to be able to see that process, that building come to pass. But all the time, they're in charge. They're the ones that are directing the show. They're the ones that are choosing. They're the ones that are making the decisions. They are the ones that see. And it's so important that you and I are people who can see. Because when we can see, we can build. You are the architect of your own life. The question for you is, what can you see? What is the marriage that you can describe? What is the family life that you can see? What is the vision that you have for your children? I appreciate the accolades this morning about being a good dad and all that kind of stuff, but the truth is that I have an incredible wife who made up for all my failings and produced two incredible children, Dakota and Paris. And together, the only thing that I brought to the table was this thing that I'm talking about right now, is vision. Because I really wasn't really good at really anything else. What I was good at is knowing where we're going and being committed to doing everything necessary to making that happen. Bree was incredible. We partnered together. Yeah, I had the vision, and she makes things happen. And so together, it's a powerful team. And together we forged a life and raised two incredible children who I'm just so proud of and so thankful for. But the truth of it is that it required knowing exactly what we were trying to do. Because until you know what it is that you're trying to achieve now, and I'm not talking about I just want to raise good kids. I just want to have a great marriage. I'm talking about specifics. What do you Paris just got married last year, this year, sometime. I mean, I don't really know my kids very well, but it's all a facade. It's all just a legend. The thing is that she got married this year. Wes is her husband, most amazing man. I'm so proud of him and so thankful for him. But the thing is that Bree and I prayed for Wes for 21 years. For the person that she would find. And it was no mistake that he is the person that he is today, and that they found one another, because that had been destined and purposed since the day she was born. By God in heaven and her earthly parents as well. And that we positioned and postured her so that when that person, ideal person that she had in her mind that she wanted to be with, came into her world, that it would be a foregone conclusion that they would end up being together. It's because it was purposed, it was designed, there was a vision behind it. I want to encourage you to be people of vision, be architects of your life. You are called to build a legacy, and I just want to, in the final moments that we have together, just talk about a couple of ways that I think that we can do that together. A couple of ideas that we've applied to our lives that have produced great things. The first idea, number one, is that there is no such thing as quality time without quantity time. There's no such thing as quality time without quantity time. When it comes to children, raising kids, you can't just sit down a kid and say, okay, sweetie, it's quality time right now. I'm going to ask you some questions and we're just going to get right into it. As a family, we spent a lot of time snowboarding. And we used to snowboard all around. It was a big part of our lives. We would snowboard over 100 days a year. That's how into it we were. But of all that time, you just imagine how many hours that I spent on a lift with my kids. Going back up the hill, going back up the hill. And maybe 5 minutes out of that hours that I spent on any given day on a lift, there would be an interaction between me and Dakota or me and Paris that actually made a dent in their world. had some impact. But it wasn't a byproduct of me determining that I needed to have some quality time. It was that I just had quantity time. And that the byproduct of that quantity time was that there were quality moments. You can't have quality time without quantity time. I can't stress to you how important it is to spend time together. You know, in marriage, it's important that we understand how it is that once we get married, that it's not two individuals anymore, but that it's actually a partnership. It's two people that now share a destiny. It's not two people coming together to make the individual destinies happen. It's actually now one destiny, a one journey together. Babe, why don't you come up here for a minute? You know, one of the things that is tough about, that we have to learn and come to terms with when we get married, is that it's two individuals that are used to walking toward their destiny alone. And when you're walking alone, it's easy. Even before we were married, we were doing similar things and heading in a similar direction, and it was great. And our destiny was over there, and we were over here, and together we were just kind of walking. We were side by side walking together. But the thing is when you get married, something else happens. And this is the part about marriage that nobody tells you about, but it's tricky. Is that in the moment that you get married, you have to do something else. You get tied together. For this example, we'll be tied together at the leg. Now, if you've ever done this at school, you'll know exactly what is about to happen. Now, we've gone from being two individuals pursuing two different destinies to two people, individuals, pursuing one destiny together. And we have to learn how to walk in unity together. If we want to be successful in our marriage, this is what we have to learn how to do. And can I be honest with you? It took us a long time to figure out how to do this well. The first 2 years of our marriage were tough because we were two individuals still trying to eke out our own life, walking as individuals. And what we had to learn to do is to walk together. And who knows that it can be a little bit outside. Learning to walk together is tough. It takes time to learn how to do it. And who knows that when you walk together, it's going to be at a little bit of a slower pace than it was when you're on your own. Now, hey, Goldie. Come up here, Goldie. This is my niece, Goldie. Everyone say hi, Goldie.
Hi, Goldie.
All right. Come over here. Now you add a baby. We're still bound together. Now I'm carrying a baby, and we got to learn to walk. We got to learn to walk together. And not drop the baby. We've got to learn to walk in unity, still fulfilling the purpose, still going after the destiny that God has for our lives. Go and stand on the other side of Auntie Bree. Golds. Rooney, come over here. All right, one for you. This is my other niece, Rooney. All right, now it's not just us carrying the baby. Now we've got to learn to walk together as a family. Come stand next to me. Put your leg in this one. On my own, it was easy to run toward the destiny. On Bree's own, it was easy to run toward it. But now, together, we've got to learn how to walk together. Because if we want to all arrive at the destiny together, this is how it's going to go. And we didn't practice this, so Lord knows what's about to happen. All right, so we're going to begin in the middle.
Okay.
Okay, and then there we go. We've got to learn. Okay. Thank these girls very much. You can jump down. All right, can I unentangle myself from this encumbrance? So here's the thing. Jesus encumbered himself to 12 men. He tied himself to 12 people to fulfill his legacy. See, I tie myself to Bree. We choose to walk toward our destiny together. I choose to tie myself to my children and learn to walk together with them. Do we get there a little slower? Absolutely. Do we have to let go of some of the possibilities of our life? Yeah, we do. But the greater destiny is that we all arrive together. Because here's the reality of the alternative and what happens in most homes. Maybe you figured out how to walk together as a husband and wife, but then the baby comes along. And guess what? The mother attaches herself to the baby, but we go, it's just the pace is too slow now. We can't keep doing this. How about you stay home? You're connected to the baby. Mum's trying to walk to the playground, taking the kids to school, doing those types of things, which are all valid and good, while dad goes off to fulfill his destiny. And then we wonder why at some time in the future that there's a disconnect between dads and their kids and husbands and wives. And it doesn't matter which way that you paint it, whoever is at home is disconnected. No, the great skill, the great trick is to realize that it is better that we travel together slowly than it is that one rushes toward their future and leaves the others behind. Jesus didn't do it. And the reason why is because while one is trying to be a legend, the legacy is left behind. And we're called to build a legacy. See, there's no substitute for quality time. Things will take longer. They will require more energy and effort. You will have to do all kinds of explaining. You'll have to practice all kinds of things. Suck it up. Jesus did it, so can you. Number 2, invest in experiences, not things. This is so important. Jesus loved good things, but never invested in them. He was happy to utilize nice things, but he never bothered about owning them for himself. I wrote down here, I've never heard how a car or a home changed someone's childhood experience. I don't know if you've ever been at Christmas Day with small children and have had the experience where you purchase this amazing gift for the child and they are much more enamored with the box the gift came in than the gift itself. Very frustrating. But it's the reason is because people remember experiences and they forget possessions. When you look back at your childhood, you don't remember the things you had, you remember the people that you did it with. Your family, your friends. Invest in experiences, not things. Now, things are good, but remember that things are a vehicle, not a destination. Things are tools to get you somewhere to achieve a purpose, but they're not a destination in and of themselves. People are your vision. Things are just help you along the way. Number 3, strong families have gravity. Strong families have gravity. And when by gravity, I mean they have an attractional pull to everything that's around them. They draw things in. They draw things in. You notice that Jesus had gravity. Wherever he went, people were drawn to him. When he went somewhere, people just naturally found themselves being drawn into their world. And that's how you can tell a great family. A great family is one in which people there's a gravitational pull and people, they begin to orbit and they get slowly sucked into it. When our children were younger, actually when Paris was in high school, her 2 best friends were a couple of boys named Jared and Trevor. Jared and Trevor. They spent the vast majority of their life at my house. They came from broken family backgrounds with lots of problematic their own stories were highly problematic. They were Paris's best friends, and literally I would wake up on a Saturday morning and one of them or both of them would be in my house somewhere. I mean, they would found themselves being drawn and attracted into our home. It wasn't because Paris was a girl and they were boys. It was because they were friends, but they were drawn not just to their friendship, but they were drawn to the family that we represented, and found themselves constantly being drawn in. And our whole life, we've found people that continued as they orbit our world, they begin to be drawn into it and find themselves at their point of need or their point of lack being drawn into that orbit. It's not because we're incredible people. It's because we have a gravitational pull. Why? Because we're unified and we're together. Gravity is a byproduct of mass. Mass that is compacted and tightly packed together produces gravity. 4 separate entities don't have the gravitational pull of 4 entities that are together and unified and together. That's what a family does. A family is a unit, unified, that produces gravity that people are drawn into. You don't have to convince people to come to church. You don't have to convince people into a relationship with God. You just have to let your life have gravity. And then where you go, other people go. Where you find yourself, they find themselves. Why? Because the gravitational pull of your life draws them into God's house, draws them into a relationship with Him. You don't have to say a word. You just had to be you, produce gravity. The greatest gravity that you can have in your life, the Bible calls it the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, selflessness, self-control. These are the things that produce gravity. You know, another great gravity, grace is a great gravity. Who isn't attracted to grace? Who doesn't want to be in a grace-filled environment? If we can have families that are unified together, walking together, yeah, they may be walking slowly, but you know what? We're going to get there together. You know, we may not be able to achieve what everybody else says that we should be able to do, but we're going to get there together. You know what? There's going to be not just us, there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are circling our world, that are going to be in our gravity, that find themselves interacting with God's house, with God's people, and in relationship with Him. That is what you and I have the ability to do. Strong families produce gravity. You might say to me, Darren, well, that's good for you. It's fine for Jesus. You know, you came from a good upbringing. You didn't have to figure it out all for yourself. And it's true, I did. My parents are my best friends. Jesus, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, He knew how to make it work. I mean, He did all the right things because of who He was. But there's another character in the Bible. And I started off this session today with those scriptures talking about Jesus calling His disciples, but there was another that called people to follow Him also. His name was Paul. He was an apostle. And we remember Paul for the great things that he did, but can I tell you that he was the most flawed individual that you would ever find. In fact, he's constantly reminding people who keep wanting to put him on a pedestal that, hey, don't put me up too high because I'm ridiculous like everybody else. Not only was he ridiculous in just an ordinary sense, he was downright evil in his early days. We don't know much about his history and his background, but I can be sure to say that he didn't come from the great ideas, great thoughts. They weren't Christ-like in his background. And yet he, as Jesus, implored people. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, he says, follow me as I follow Christ. Follow me as I follow Christ. Jesus called His disciples and said, follow me. You may today here go, well, it was all right for Jesus, it was all right for you, Darren, but my life, my family history sucks. This is the first time I've ever heard of anything that stings up your stuff and talk. I don't know. Is there a legacy in me? If there was a legacy for Paul, there's a legacy for you. If there's a legacy for Paul who had done some of the worst possible things, was anti-Christ in every way, if there was a legacy for him in which he could confidently say, follow me as I follow Christ, then there's a legacy for you too. And as I've spoken today, maybe in your heart you've been inspired, but in your heart there's been a little cry because you're going, man, I didn't experience any of that stuff you're talking about. I didn't have parents that did any of that stuff. I was just kind of left to my own devices, or it was just me and my siblings, and we're just trying to figure it out. The beauty of a legacy is that it can begin today. A legacy isn't dependent on yesterday. It's actually a choice we choose today to build forward.